good suggestion.
John, I mean, I don't know if you'd be interested in the same thing some other organizations do, but like the Heraldry Society in the United Kingdom, they've started holding these Zoom lectures, and they record those. And they also have reference materials on their website. They also have, you know, the standard sundry items that any reference, you know, website would have. But the lectures, I've attended 2 of them, and they're very fascinating. They usually have some expert talking about something specific, like the stained glass collection in Philadelphia was one of them. It's very fascinating.
So they put these recorded lectures up on the website.
A very good idea.
Jackie, you were also talking before about the auctions. It's possible we can create a section for the auctions, and where folks can put up what they're donating, what they want to sell, and perhaps we can use that as a place to do it.
Yeah. The problem with the auctions, as I see it, is that we sell a lot of items for 50 cents, $1, $2, $5, and the physical, it's easy when we're together to hand it over, and it's more difficult if people have to go to UPS or the post office and ship it and pay the postage and so on. So that's why I thought it might be somewhat impractical to do it that way.
But it's still possible. Yeah, it's still possible to do that, especially with smaller stuff rather than large.
And Tom, maybe you, since Chris has been our auctioneer for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe Tom, maybe you and Chris could talk about a mechanism for doing the auction before we get to the point of having in-person meetings again.
I think it'd be great. Sure.
We will, God willing, someday be able to do again.
Sure.
I will say, I'll say, Jack, that when I was NAVA treasurer, just to deaccession some things, I actually had, using eBay, I had some of the flags advertised for bid, and they would just, even having them at a really low price, they would just kind of cycle through, and I'd have to re-advertise the auction, and I didn't get a lot of traffic. There were a few things that I sold, but it did take a while to deaccession things.
Yeah. David.
Yeah, I'd like to cycle back to what we were talking about earlier. And we are expanding beyond the Chesapeake Bay region. And I'd be very loath to pass up the opportunity to feed into the more national website. And I think Ethan's idea of recording our meetings and putting them on a local website is very good. Maybe we want them on the national website too. But auctions, I think, should go national, so that you have a better pool of possible buyers. And anything else that we consider putting on the website, on our website, we should also look first at putting it on the national.
That actually leads into what was the next item, and so we can sort of merge these all together. We've gotten from NAVA a draft suggestion for what they call the NAVA Affiliates Program, where NAVA, I'll read it to you, recognizes the opportunity to support and promote regional flag studies group. And so they are going to ask us if we would like to be an actual official NAVA affiliate. We would then be listed on the website. We'd have our activities reported in Vexillum. We'd receive notice of new NAVA members joining in the geographic area, something which I go looking for every month. Have legitimacy when dealing with officialdom, and receive guidance on best practices from NAVA. That would be what they propose as the benefit to the affiliate. And the benefit to them is that it pursues its mission of advancing vexillology, gains a pipeline for recruiting members and retaining members. Not all members of the local associations are NAVA members, although most of them are. and there wouldn't be any legal governance or financial connection, but the groups would be able to exchange member information. And their suggestion would be that if we were an affiliate on the NAVA website, on nava.org, would be a link to the Chesapeake Bay Flag Association website as well. And before I signed us up for the affiliates program, I wanted to just to throw it out and see what other people thought. When local groups were being formed back in the 80s, NAVA had talked about establishing regional chapters. There was some concern as to legal obligations and other things, and that never happened. And the local associations like CBFA, like Portland Flag Association, like New England Vexillological Association, just became independent entities. And it was particularly useful for people in a more narrow geographic area who couldn't necessarily get to the national annual NAVA meeting each year. And that was basically how we got started. Now they're also talking about not only regional affiliates, but possibly interest sections, or people who are interested in military flags, for example. That's something Peter could probably talk to, and NAVA can figure out. But I wasn't sure whether people wanted to stay completely independent or whether they thought that becoming an affiliate was a good idea.
But yeah,
Open it up.
I remember, Jack, that we had this discussion about chapters versus affiliates at one time. I think
30 years ago, yes.
Yeah, but I think we did that relatively recently for CBFA. I think I remember the discussion not that long ago. And we were trying to understand what the difference between a chapter and an affiliate was and whether it's a good thing. So are you suggesting that if we become an affiliate with NAVA, we can't be a separate?
We're still separate. We're still
just
have our own autonomy, but we will show up on the NAVA website and we can say we are a NAVA affiliated organization.
We'd be associated with NAVA as opposed to be
as being part. We're not a sub-unit of NAVA.
I think that's where I was going for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris.
Jack, I think in the past, and I don't know if this is currently the case, but in the past, hasn't CVFA been an organizational member of NAVA? I mean, we've paid, yeah. So I mean, the precedence is there, and I think based on what you've explained to us, I really don't see a downside to it.
We're also a member of FIAV as well, the International Federation, as an individual
right, we are
organization separate from NAVA.
I think since '95, wasn't it?
Yes, 97 maybe. No, 95. You're right.
Yeah. Okay.
Question:
Al,
if we are an affiliate, can we continue to be an organizational member? Because we do get to appoint a representative who then does have a vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I presume. Well, I'll ask Peter to speak about that in a minute or two. Gus, did you have something you want to say? Gus?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, go ahead. I was reading something about following up what Tom was saying. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, did you have
So
something?
you had your hand up, I think.
Did you have?
No. I was.
Oh, okay.
I was reading something. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Well, Gus, we were planning to have a Kew Gardens subchapter of CVFA, if that's any incentive for you.
Yes, fantastic. It will be member one. So
I'll get, if we can ask Tom to draw up the articles of incorporation for the Kew Gardens subchapter,
Right.
that'd be great.
John,
Well,
John Radel, did you have any thoughts?
what?
Do you have any thoughts either on the website or the affiliates?
Thoughts are scarce, thoughts are rare. No, not really. I'm not sure it makes that big a difference, really, honestly. I mean, if there are benefits to be seen as an affiliate, that's, I think, just fine. It certainly sounds like they're not trying to lock us into any scheme of controlling us. which would be the only concern I have is suddenly we get these dictates from NAVA World Headquarters, which I don't think is where they're going with this. And on the website, all I really have to say is that we do have a website. The content is woefully out of date. We have a new website, which is sort of a shell waiting to have some content poured into it. I have always been willing to help out with the technology end of it, and my son actually, as a project for school, brought up the structure of the new website and all of that. The issue always has been, does someone actually care enough to routinely create content for that site? So that really is the question. Is there enough value to having a website, and is there someone there's someone who's interested in, at least doing announcements for the meetings and a little bit about the minutes of the meetings and a little bit of information as to why people might want to search us out if they're interested in flags and they're in the Mid-Atlantic. That's all I have.
I have trouble actually using the brand new can opener at one time. I can't imagine working with a website.
Well, if you give us the articles and it's something that we don't have to work too hard to pour onto a website, you don't even necessarily have to deal with the website yourself as a content provider. Mm-hmm. It's just that I've never felt that I've had the time and energy to also take on the role of routinely writing.
Oh, I see. So you're, John, you're looking for, let me see if I got this. You've got the website set up. You just need folks to put articles into it that if we send them to you, you could put the articles or the material into the website because someone will manage that part of it. Is that one?
Yep, that's one model. The other is it's a WordPress site. Some of you are probably familiar with WordPress. You can think of it essentially as an editor like Word, but on the web. And as a content provider, you have a little login and you go in and you start putting your text and your pictures in, and the technology burden for the content provider is relatively low. Yeah. I mean, if you're happy doing a Word document and putting some, inserting some pictures into your Word document, this is probably not a big burden.
Oh, okay.
Well, the hope was that we wouldn't have to be John all the time, that we would have a couple of people who were skilled in getting content up, and we could say to people, for the next 6 months, send any content to Jack or send content to Chris or whoever, who would then do the uploading of it. Okay. And I'm been trying. So it's been my fault, really, because I met with Joe Radel about 10 months ago, and unfortunately, in my usual procrastination, I managed to forget most of what I had learned about how doing it. So I'm gonna get together with Joe again. But do people think that
Admiral Preble had a question? I think.
Yeah, I see his hand up. I'm ignoring him.
It was not going to be a wisecrack.
Okay, wait a minute. It just Arthur had a question first. You'll have to wait your turn. Arthur wanted to know, what was the question about dues, Art?
Well, one thing about affiliates, are we expected to be members of NAVA because we're members of the Chesapeake Bay, and vice versa? No. So that's very clear.
We encourage our CBFA members to join NAVA, but there is no requirement to be a NAVA member for CBFA. Some of the local groups do have dues. We don't. We've been able to finance what little we needed to spend out of money from the auctions at the meetings. And right now we still have money in the treasury. So that's not a problem for CBFA, and no one has to pay NAVA dues. It would be nice if you did, but nobody has to. Peter, do you want to weigh in on?
Another question.
Oh yeah, wait a minute. Okay.
Does this affect our standing in FIOB? I mean, if we have 10 small US groups.
FIOB is happy to have us as a member. They don't purge their membership roles unless you don't show up for a number of meetings. there was a lot of debate back in the 90s as to whether all these local US groups could be admitted to FIOV. Many of us met the criteria at the time, but don't meet the criteria now, but nobody has kicked us out. Yeah, and so that's that answer. Chris, I'm sorry, your comment.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to say that I agree with John's, just kind of his assessment in that a lot of it kind of comes down to the who's going to do the maintenance of the site and that kind of thing, and it can be you know, a bit of a commitment. So my thought was just something more bare bones that might just talk about who we are and have some contacts for us if you want to learn about our meetings, and maybe just talk about our meetings. And if we had a regular cycle of meetings, we could publish that. And then perhaps certain links, like a link to NAVA, a link to FIOV, maybe a link to Flag of the World, that kind of thing, which I would say it's not likely to get out of date anytime soon, so it doesn't need to really be maintained as intensely as some of these other things that are more content oriented. And so I think the main thing is just to get people in contact with us so we can have exchanges like the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
My thought.
Nick?
I tend to agree with Chris.
Yeah, Jack, I think a lot of us, when we travel, we like visiting historic sites and take photographs of flags. I can think of Jefferson Barracks outside of St. Louis, the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial in Pittsburgh, Smithsonian. There are many places I've taken a lot of decent photographs and would love to find some sort of archive to place those on. And I think a CBFA website would be a great place to put those.
Great, thank you. Well, that's a good idea. I am going to, before we go to our break, I'm going to ask Peter to weigh in whatever way you would like to, Peter.
Sure. On the affiliate program, I think several people have already touched on it. The basic idea behind it is just to formalize what we're doing already. There already is this sort of informal relationship between CBFA and the Portland Flag Association on one hand and NAVA on the other. And all we're doing is sort of putting down on paper the fact that, yes, you know, we are connected with them informally in this way, that NAVA will put contact information on our website and will formalize the process of letting new members know that CBFA is out there and things like that. So I think, as somebody said, maybe it was John, I don't think there really is a downside to it. Interesting question about being an organizational member and an affiliate. To be honest, I hadn't thought of that before. But thinking about it off the top of my head, I don't see a big problem there. Because what it really amounts to is being an organizational member of NAVA means expressing support from NAVA for NAVA and you know, paying dues. And if CBFA feels that that's a good thing to do, then they can do it. If they don't have to do it. So I sort of see it as two separate things. So like I said, I don't really see a downside to it. Who knows what it'll develop into in the future, but it's a worthwhile thing to do, I think.
Good. Well, thank you. We will think about this and talk about it again. I'll send out an email. I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break. There are some of us who are old enough to need the bathroom and might want to eat a little lunch. We will resume at 1:15 sharp. Okay? All right.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
There we go. Okay. My presentation is about the Nordic crosses. And we're familiar with the 5 Nordic flags, all have the same kind of cross. Some of their dependencies also do. The Åland Islands belong to Finland. The Faroe Islands belong to Denmark. Greenland belongs to Denmark, but it doesn't use the Nordic Cross, so heck with it. But a few years ago, I was in northern Scotland and found these three flags. Caithness is the area around Donald Roads. The Orkney Islands are just north of the Scottish mainland, and the Shetland Islands are north of the Orkney Islands, and they all use the Nordic Cross. And I thought, this is kind of interesting, and I thought I'd look into it a little bit more. So I found these in the east, a Free Karelia from 1920, Ingria or Ingermanland or Inkerima, whatever. And then the Vepsians, who are a Araic language group. This is where these places are located. You can see FO2 is Karelia, it's the largest one. FO4 are the Ingrians. They're located around St. Petersburg. And they migrated from Finland down to that area before the Russians conquered it and made it their capital. But they're still in the area. They, for many years, had return rights to Finland, but I think that's lapsed now after 20 years. And then the Vepsians are also in Eastern Karelia, but they're a very small group, much smaller than that slide suggests. Historically in Germany, there were Nordic crosses. During the Second Reich, during the Kaiser's Empire, they used it as a war ensign. During World War II, the conspiracy that tried to blow up Hitler used the one on the right, the resistance flag. The CDU in Germany, the Christian Democratic Union, used it as the basis for their party flag from 1953 to 1970. And the CDU proposed the inverse of the resistance flag for the West German national flag in 1949. But as you know, that proposal didn't carry. The resistance flag is still used today, as we see in this picture. It's kind of fun because the resistance flag was an anti-Nazi flag, and the Alternative for Deutschland is considered a neo-Nazi organization. So it'd be kind of like the alt-left here in the United States playing with the Confederate flag. Now, there are many more variations of the Nordic Cross, and I looked it up on Flags of the World and came up with a huge list of which I could copy about half. But just so that you know that what I'm covering is not everything. Where did the Nordic Cross come from? In the Middle Ages, there were kind of hints. Of course, the cross was a big logo on shields, arms, and stuff. And these are some examples. But what I think is the most interesting one are the Teutonic flags. The Teutonic Order used the one on the left, and the Grand Master used the one on the right. And you can see that there's something of the Nordic Cross there. Now, I cannot find, from my limited research, I couldn't find anything older than the Teutonic Order. The Calvalari Union, this is the union dominated by Denmark, of Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. Norway including Iceland, and Sweden including Finland. From 1397 to 1523. It's not very clear that they even had a flag, but to the extent that somebody thinks they did, it was this yellow flag with the red cross. Now, may I suggest that the Danish flag and the English flag are related? And the answer is no. The Cross of St. George is an intentional copy from the Republic of Genoa in Italy. Back in the Middle Ages, Genoa was a major seafaring and trading power, and England was not. And so it's not unusual, but the English just started using the Genoese flag, and it continues to this day. So the other flags from the UK, plus Groningen in the Netherlands, that are using the centered cross are probably not related to the Nordic cross. The Danish flag seems to be the ancestor of all the flags. The Danish flag, the Dannebrog, is considered the oldest national flag in the world. There are definite links between the Danish flag and the Swedish flag, and between the Swedish flag and the Finnish flag, so indirectly with the Danish flag, and also directly links from the Danish flag to the Norwegian and Icelandic flags. According to the legend, during the Battle of Villismai in Estonia in 1219, the Danish flag descended from heaven and guaranteed the Danes' victory in the battle, and of course, control of Estonia. The Estonians didn't have much to say about it because they were already being controlled by the Teutonic German order. So it's just one conqueror for another. Now, I had a little bit of fun with the Nordic flags too, with the Nordic cross. So you start with the Swedish flag, add some red from the old Finnish flag. This is the flag of Finland when it was a Grand Duchy, and also from their Swedish times, and you get the Åland Islands flag. The Åland Islanders wanted to rejoin Sweden in 1920 after Finland became independent. They thought they wanted to speak Swedish and not have to put up with all these Finns running around. They didn't succeed, and so they talked for years about what kind of flag they should have, and they eventually settled on the Swedish flag with the addition of Finnish red. Now you also have the Finnish flag and the Danish flag, but it does not equal the Faroe Islands flag. The Faroe Islands flag was designed in 1919, but wasn't really used until World War II, when the Faroese wanted to have a flag to distinguish them from Denmark, which was occupied. So the Allies let them use this flag. And then after the war, it became official. So the Faroese flag seems to be a combination of the Norwegian plus the Danish flags. Now, is Norway a model? For Iceland, Åland Islands, the Faroe Islands, Caithness, the resistance flag, Ingerman flag, Vepsian flag, and Karelian flag, plus the German ones. That's a good question. Historically, the link between the Norwegian flag and the Icelandic flag is curious. On this slide, you can see the various proposals for an Icelandic flag. Einar Benedictson's proposal in 1874 gained some traction and seemed to be on its way to becoming the flag. But then the Danish king didn't quite like it. And at some point he said, no, you gotta, it looks too much like the Greek flag, so you gotta come up with something else. And so they added some Danish red, and of course it sailed right through them. Inversions, the Norwegian and Icelandic flags are just inverted in colors. The Orkney Islands and the Åland Islands are also inverted. Finland and the Shetland Islands. Like I said, I'm having fun. Resistance and the CDU's proposal. The Karelian flag never really got going. The Free Karelia flag was designed by the Finnish national artist Akseli Gallen-Kallela in 1920, because the Finns had this desire to reunite with Karelia. Karelians weren't too thrilled with it, but the Finns loved the idea. So Gallen-Kallela came up with this design. It lasted for about a year, and then the Bolsheviks took over. The Soviets set up the Karelo-Finnish Soviet Socialist Republic and eventually came up with the flag for it, which is the one at the top right. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union, or I guess during the, I'm sorry, back up. Historically, the Karelo-Finnish Soviet Socialist Republic was a constituent republic of the Soviet Union, like Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. After they got rid of the Soviet Socialist Republic, it became an autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic and had a Russian flag with the label of the country or a label of the autonomous republic on it. The present flag of the Russian Republic of Karelia borrows from the Soviet Socialist Republic flag, and how well it's rooted in Karelia, I don't know, but the Karelia is a good deal less Finnish and probably a good deal less Karelian than it was before the Great Purges, and Stalin wiped out a good number of people during that because they were afraid that Karelia would want to join Finland. So that's the fun I had with the Nordic Cross. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
I have a question for David.
Ask away.
David, I heard you mention that you're in Finland right now. Was your study of the Nordic flags really inspired by this trip, or was it something you had an interest in for a long time?
For a long time. I mean, I've been married to a Finn for almost 35 years. And yeah, it kind of grows on you. When you spend your summers in Finland, you start noticing things.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Jack, I've got
yes,
a sort of an amusing footnote on something that Dave talked about.
Okay.
It concerns the relationship between the flag of Genoa and the English St. George's flag.
Mm-hmm.
As I recall, I'd have to look at my notes about this, but as I recall, the story was that the reason the English started using the Genoese flag was that they were sending ships carrying the Crusader troops to the Mediterranean, and they wanted protection from pirates, and they knew that Genoa was the superpower in the Mediterranean. So they actually arranged with Genoa to pay Genoa an annual fee for the privilege of flying the Genoese flag on their ships. And that went on for quite a while, and then just sort of fell out of favor. And just within the last couple of years, the city of Genoa was facing a budget crisis. And so the mayor of Genoa wrote to the Queen of England and said, hey, you need to pay up if you want to keep using our flag as the flag of England.
And
I don't think Her Majesty was amused.
I actually think she was. I think everything you said was correct, and I've come across it too. Whether it's specifically for the Crusades, I'm not sure, but I think that the English did pay Genoa some minor payment for the use of their flag, but very small.
In recent times, you mean?
Yeah, in recent times.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
When the Genoese presented the bill, I think they actually coughed up some money. And whether they're continuing to cough up the money, I don't know. But I kind of doubt that.
That's interesting. The English flag, of course, is still popular there. You see it at sports events and things like
Becoming
that.
more popular.
Yeah.
And in some ways has a sort of right-wing tone
Yes.
to it.
Nationalistic, yes.
Yeah.
Nationalistic, yeah. Do that. I'm going to ask, thank you, David. I'm going to ask John Andrews if he would like to be next. I know he's got some interesting stuff to tell us.
All right. Thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Great. Okay. All right. So let's see if I can screen share. Can I? Yeah, let's share. Great. Can everyone see my slideshow? Because I can't.
Yes.
Great. From the beginning. So as a lot of us know, some of us have spent time in archives and some of us have not. Betty gave us that great talk at NAVA 54 about the Library of Congress, and it really kind of got to me thinking about, what should we do about archives during COVID? The problem is that COVID has limited our ability to do any kind of archival or library research. While there's a lot of, online resources and things like that that are wonderful, nothing, replaces the ability, if you can, to get in there and actually put your hands in some, in some libraries, from some archives. And while we can't go to some of them are open, some of them are closed. The big one here in College Park is closed. But there's things we can do in the meantime to get ready for them to open back up. And what I thought might make sense is for new people who have not researched in archives before, or for us old salty dogs that have, been living inside the bowels and the dungeons of great libraries, to maybe dust off the cobwebs and talk about that. So that's what I'd like to talk to you guys today. So first and foremost, what's an archive? There's academic definitions of all these things. Basically, at the end of the day, it's a repository for historical documents managed by an institutional caretaker. This can be something huge, like National Archives got billions of documents, or something just kind of a little bit more modest. First thing, I think the mistakes that I have made, and every lesson that I'm sharing with you is very hard learned. I've made every one of these mistakes. I think the first thing we have to do is just kind of do your homework on your homework, if that makes any sense. So when I say, the tendency to want to do is to jump right into, into our research, the Google thing, find a digital archive, find a place and storm the archives and get your hands dirty. But a lot of times what you end up doing is you end up burning hours. Either you're in the wrong spot, you're researching the wrong thing, or you're in a limited archive that doesn't have the information that you're really looking for. So I'd hate to say to research the research, but that's actually what you should probably do, is make sure that you're actually digging in the right spot before you start digging. And that will save a lot of time. And what it also can do is it can place a check on the realities of what you're trying to achieve If you discover through your research of, I don't know, some obscure flag or some obscure topic that the archive is way outside your reach or it's outside your travel budget, it may cut down the heartache of when you're 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe a couple months into this before you realize you actually can't complete this in a reasonable way. So next, I'd say to, develop a plan after you've done that. Once you've said, okay, I've identified the resource, I've identified the archive, which is feasible, it's in range, I can go to it. Develop a comprehensive line of inquiry that you'd like to follow. What is it that you're trying to find out about flags? If it's something like, in the Army of Tennessee, were Confederate flags predominantly wool or silk? All right, that's a pretty specific research question. You may have a more broad question about flags, but try and put some limit and some focus on it. So when you start to translate this to archival research, that your librarian, your archivist can actually help you with this. Your research question will probably evolve. It'll get out of hand. I will show you a sample research question that I did just for preparing for this talk today. And I'll tell you how I got off topic immediately. Stay on topic and try and focus on what's important. So here was a question that I threw out. What became of the 19th Virginia Infantry's battle flag after the Battle of Pickett's Charge? It's actually a well-known about thing. We know what happened to it. It's secure. But if you notice that little square that was missing out of it, someone tore that out, which got me into a line of inquiry, which instantly took me away from the 19th Virginia flag. I found information about this gentleman here. This is Benjamin Franklin Falls. He's the guy that actually captured the flag at Pickett's Charge. He was awarded Medal of Honor. But Falls is, in all of the collections, it's obscure. It just says capture a flag, which got me into another research question about flags. How many Medal of Honors were granted in the Civil War for capturing of Confederate battle flags, which takes me now one step further. And then it takes me into this conspiracy about where is that scrap? Is it buried on him? Is it his effects? And it very quickly got out of hand. I probably devoted like 2 hours into this topic before I had even had my slides completed. And that was in a slideshow about not your research not getting away from you. I actually got my research to get away from me. And it's very quickly can get out of control. Great. So once you determine the things you want to do, you actually want to get what you're looking to do. You've put some research boundaries on this. You're saying, Western Europe, 1939 to 46 or something like that. Then you contact the archive. Be very, very specific in your consultation over phone or email, preferably email, before you're visiting the facility. Very few archivists and librarians, present company excluded, are actual vexillologists. So if you send emails and details to it, this will save everyone some time. Research professionals are often inundated with in-person requests, so don't run up on these people. Sometimes it does bother them. I understand that they're duty bound to help you out, but a little forward warning will give everybody some elbow room and it'll make everybody happy. Ultimately, when you're doing archival research or in a library, you depend upon the goodwill and a good working relationship with these people, and they are super helpful. If you've never used a microfilm machine, or it's been some years since you used a microfilm machine, having somebody help you thread this little thing on there and which button turns it on and which shelf am I trying to go to, that will make things go a lot faster, and it makes the experience kind of nice. Last but not least, it's time to dig. You got to put the hours in. So go to the archive, travel to the archive when you get there. You'll submit out what's called a pull slip. People will go back into the stacks, which is the area where the documents are actually stored. You're not going to be allowed to go in there yourself and start pulling things out. Some large facilities have designated pull times, so you need to get your slip in before, and if not, you may have to wait a couple hours till you get it. Smaller libraries and archives may not have that. Typically what will happen is an assistant will go back and get it. They'll put on a cart or some kind of means of transporting it, and they'll be in catalogs boxes, and they'll give custodial responsibility to it. You'll wheel your cart over into a reading room, and you'll actually dig in. You'll open up the documents. You'll go through them. You put them back in the box. You can't mix them around or do anything crazy like that. You don't want to do that. You need to bring some means of recording your research, digital camera, scanners, if they're allowed. You have to check with the individual archives first. You're not allowed to have pens or any of these things like that. A lot of times you can't mess with the documents. You can't mar it. Each archive is going to have individual security procedures. So you want to make sure that you comply with those. And some will provide pencils, index cards, things like that. If anybody's ever researched the National Archives, their security is pretty intense. And be prepared for something like that. Sort through as much material as you can. You're going to get tired. Establish some kind of rhythm. Take a break, maybe every 30 minutes. Archival documents have a feel to them. They're usually grouped together for a common purpose, so they'll feel like they're not only are they organized together. You can tell the person that organized them together, whether it's chronologically. They have I don't know how to describe it. They kind of like almost a rhythm to it. You'll probably get pulled in at some point in time. That's okay. When I was doing research in January before COVID, I was reading State Department cables from the late 1920s or early 1930s, and it was an Assyrian patriarch in Iraq writing to the U.S. consul that they felt their security was in danger. They were presaging a massacre that was going to happen in 1932, but you're reading about this in real time, going, holy hell, this is terrible. Why didn't somebody stop this? And it's and I don't use the word privilege a lot. I don't like it, but it is a privilege to hang on to these documents and to reach into the past and to look at them. And if you get pulled in, then all right, so what? Hopefully you've made a discovery. When you're done, double document, make sure that you have means of putting this into a footnote and documenting your research. So, if a future researcher can come back and check and make sure that the flag that you're talking about, the topic you're talking about is what you really need. Thank your archivist on the way out. Put things in an orderly fashion and just kind of move out. These are some this is a diplomatic cable that I had in January. This is what they look like. And depending on documents, they all have different looks. It's always a bunch of stamps and crap like that on top of them. This one came from, let's see here, April of 33 on it. This is a flag that I found in documents. The thing about flag research is that this was a random Iraqi flag that somebody had sketched out in a diplomatic cable. This took me about 5 hours to find. You're not going to find the thing that says, flags, 1930, whatever to whatever. They're always mixed into something else. Diplomatic cables, that anybody that work with State Departments or consuls, a lot of times these guys are area experts in the areas they're serving in. And area experts overseas, just like us, they love flags. They love geography. They love all this stuff. That's why why would somebody give up their life and move to Baghdad in 1926? They have an interest in this kind of stuff in foreign service. And you will run into little things like that. I ran into a letter asking the consul in Baghdad if it was okay to reproduce the flag and the king's face on rubber toys. I don't know what you do with that, but that was there. I wasn't looking for this document, but it popped out. And the thing about when you're putting the work in, you just kind of have to dig, and hopefully it turns out, and sometimes it doesn't. It's a bust. You want to travel. When you travel early. Be prepared to set some kind of limits. Again, it's expensive to travel to some place and get a hotel if you're going to do that. Hopefully it's an archive that's nearby. If it's not practical to put in the hours at a distant archive, you probably shouldn't undertake the research because you're unlikely to get it in on your first shot. Treat everyone with respect, especially obviously we're all respectful people, but support your librarians and archivists, and just kind of have fun. This is the best part. It's great to go do these things. It's why we do this stuff, and kind of leaves in perspective. That's my research assistant there. That was my machine at archives that day that I died in front of that day. So in conclusion, though COVID-19 is kind of left us down, we're not out. There's a lot of things that we can do. We can contact librarians. We can reach out for digital sources. We can make plans. So when this stuff is over, that we shoot out, we go do the research, and we get what we came for. And that concludes my talk. If anybody have any questions, comments, or discussions, I know we have a lot of salty dogs here who are great researchers, and I'd love to hear anything that anybody has to say. Thank you.
Let me start the parade. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting, very worthwhile.
I'm gonna stop sharing. Here we go. Good.
One of your one of your points about the State Department cables, since I'm the Foreign Service Officer present. That was an official cable, well, not an official cable, it was an official document that was sent back to the States from Baghdad. Fine. That eventually morphed into what we called an airgram, which was a definitely less prestigious way of communicating with the State Department than cable was. And after a while, the airgram basically died. And now, however, with the marvels of technology, even the State Department has caught up with the idea of being able to insert pictures and files, videos, and sound recordings straight into State Department cables. And so we're back. And but anyway, if you're going to be looking at anything that's much older than, say, 2010, don't expect to find anything graphic. It's all going to be text in the cables.
So is this literally like, and again, I don't know this stuff. Is this literally they would take all this stuff and just like put it in an envelope and send? Is it when they say cable? I mean, is it transmitted?
You would, if it's an airgram, you would pouch it back. If it was a cable, you put it on the wire and send it back by telegraph. But I guess in the old days they were called dispatches.
Yeah, I run into that all the time.
And you would stick it in an envelope, give it to a courier or give it to a sea captain or something, and he would carry it back for you.
Is it usually like mundane stuff like that? Like I would find like just like chit chat in it, or like little post-its about.
It could be chit chat. Basically these guys would write these long letters, especially before the invention of the telegraph. The diplomatic correspondence was incredibly long. I've read books that included State Department and my goodness, they go into all kinds of detail and stuff, and it would just run on and on and on and on and on. And but that's the way they did it back then. The long telegram from 1947 by George F. Kennan was a telegram. He sent it back. I forget how many sections of that telegram there were, but there were quite a few, I'm sure, if it was that long, and it was. And even when I was working, the State Department couldn't handle much more than, say, 4 pages, and then you'd have to send a second cable, and on it went. So messages, don't look for too much in cables until you get up to about 2010.
Oh, that's great. Awesome.
So they'll never go to a Twitter standard of 140 characters.
Actually, pardon me, the State Department is using Twitter now. And yes, they do use 140 characters.
It doesn't inspire confidence somehow.
No, it doesn't. But the State Department is being pressured not to write 160-page cables anymore. So if you can get it into 140 characters, so much the better.
John, I could add a little more a shortcut to all that. If the folks who remember that CBFA sponsored a change in a flag display as one of our projects a couple of years ago for the Henry Ford Museum. That was the FDR car flags that we did. That's on display at the Henry Ford Museum. Now, we needed to get, documents. We wanted to get, information about the flag itself, which one to use, and all that kind of thing. And I would call Henry Ford and we'd get someone on the phone. Well, the guy I was working with had 5 magic words that sort of went beyond all that. He says, "I'm a White House correspondent." And as soon as he said that, I got right into the curator. We got right to the very top. And goodness, I tell you, the doors that opened just with those 5 magic words.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thanks for that, Tom. Keith has got something he's going to talk to us about next.
Sure. So it's still in the development stages. Like I said, the historian came to me and asked me if I would put together a short little description on the Coast Guard ensign. So I have one here. This is the current iteration. You can, it's not going to see it with, my room's a mess. So, but so I started putting together, they wanted like a one-page document on the Coast Guard ensign. And when they came to the historian, they thought that we had something kind of off the shelf. And you would think that we would, but we don't. There is probably, there's less than 10 historians or museum curators in the Coast Guard. And when you contrast that to the Navy or the Army or Air Force, we're nowhere near where we need to be. So they are completely overwhelmed and they rely mostly on volunteers. So when somebody volunteers, they latch on and you're part of the group. So they wanted to get about a page description on the history of the Coast Guard ensign. And when we started looking into it, there really wasn't anything out there. There's a little bits and pieces here and there, but when I started doing the research, I was finding that a vast majority of what's been put out has just been regurgitated every couple of years. So it looks like every 10 or 15 years, they want to put together a little history, and a public affairs officer will go back to what they wrote the last time and kind of redo it. And what I was finding is every couple of years, you'd see these articles either in our internal Coast Guard newsletters or magazines or on the internet, and the wording after reading them, it's the same, to the point where some of them were completely plagiarizing what it was they were basing it off of. But I wanted to find out the original sources and kind of figure out, well, what's the real history opposed to what's been passed down from, in boot camp from one Coast Guard member to the other. And when you start looking into, the original sources, it's a lot different than what we've been kind of putting out there, because no one really wants to seem to do the research, which obviously we just heard is a lot more difficult than just doing a couple of Google searches. So that project has gotten way out of hand real quick, as anything it does, but it's been interesting. So we're still in the early stages at this point, but I'll share a little bit of what we've kind of found out. For those who don't know, the Coast Guard was officially established in 1915. It was a merger between a life-saving service, which was founded about the 1800s, and the Revenue Cutter Service, which was founded in 1790. And the whole purpose of the Revenue Cutter Service was that we just finished the Revolutionary War. We kind of disbanded everything, and now the new nation is sitting there saying, we don't have any money, and without an income tax, the best way to do it was to come up with this system of cutters that would go up and down the coast and essentially collect tariffs and import customs and stuff like that. So that was the original purpose of this organization, founded in 1790, and it kind of went on from there. So one of the first questions I started asking is, why does the Coast Guard have a specific ensign? Because for the first 9 years, it just flew the regular U.S. flag. And it has been pretty much been said, well, the reason is because they wanted to have a distinctive badge, essentially, to let other mariners know that this is the customs boat and not, a pirate boat. And obviously it makes sense. Congress had not appropriated any funds for uniforms, and even if they did, the original, there it is, the original uniforms that the Revenue Marine or Cutter Service had were the same as the Navy. So when I started looking into it, the other aspect of why they needed to have a distinctive flag was actually never talked about. And I was looking into, okay, well, what else was going on in 1799? Because it had 9 years after the organization. Why did they come up with a new flag? Because obviously, why did they need it? They didn't need it for the first 9 years. And right around 1799, in that area, is when the Quasi-War at France was going on. And no one has ever really seemed to put these two and two together. But the Navy was disbanded after the Revolutionary War, and the Coast Guard, or the Revenue Cutter Service, kind of changed the names, was really the only armed service at the time. The Navy started to come out with a bunch of boats at the time, but really needed the Revenue Cutter Service assistance. So there's original documents that I found in which they've ordered these revenue ships to be part of the Navy and to fight alongside the Navy. So you have 1799, where you have half the ships that are collecting customs duties, and then the other half the ships that are in active armed conflict with France. So I think that has a lot to do about why the ensign kind of came into being at the time, is to differentiate, you know, if you're a French merchant ship coming in, you know, is this ship going to attack me, or is it just trying to collect customs duties? So I'm going to try to do a screen share here and see if, let's try this, see what comes up. All right, apparently Apple wants me to go through some let me try this again. Sorry, I'm not that big at technology. Okay, I don't know what you're seeing. I'm assuming you're seeing my screen now. But okay, so
yeah, we're seeing it now.
Okay, cool. So I don't really have a PowerPoint presentation. I just kind of have my Word document that we're kind of working on here. This is some of the quotes that I've got about, you know, cutters that are actually employing directly into armed conflict. So 1799 comes down, and there's a regulation that came out through Congress, and it stated that the cutters and boats employed in the service shall be distinguished from other vessels by an ensign independent, and that shall be prescribed directly by the president. And I don't want to go, I have 200 years of history. I'm trying to compress into 10 minutes, so I don't want to go too into the weeds here. But pretty much what happened was someone came up with a design, and we don't know exactly who it is, presented it to the president, which is Adams at the time. And there's a great quote in there. It says, he has no great objection to the marks on the ensign and pennant. The yellow color, however, I do not admire. I'd love to know what he was talking about, the yellow color. I think a lot of that is unfortunately probably lost to history. But overall, the design was 16 perpendicular stripes, alternate red and white, the union of the ensign to the arms of the United States, and a dark blue on a white field. So they distinctively made it different than the U.S. ensign so that you could see it differently. The number of stripes was 16, even though we had 15 states at the time. Well, we had 16 states at the time, but there was only 15. They're using the 15 star, 15 stripe flag. And I don't know whether they were anticipating that we'd go from the 15 star stripe, the 15 stripe flag to a 16 stripe flag and keep moving on. And then the ensign would kind of follow alongside. But for whatever reason, it has stuck with 16 ever since then, although there has been some flags I found that have 13 or 17. And I think a lot of those are probably mistakes at that point. It's called the Coast Guard ensign because it was actually flown as a national ensign. During wartime, or when the ships would go overseas, they would take down the revenue ensign and fly a U.S. ensign. And this pretty much goes up until probably after the Civil War, in which the Coast Guard ensign became more of a distinguishing badge flag kind of, and the U.S. ensign was flown predominantly. And I was able to find some original documents in which, in fact, there's one interesting story where a revenue ship was in Annapolis under the control, well, working with the Navy, who ordered them to help the Army. And the captain had assumed that, well, I'm in combat, I'm going to go fly the U.S. ensign. And the local captain got annoyed, went to the Secretary of the Treasury, and a directive came down telling him, you know, unless you are officially moved into the Navy, you are to fly the revenue flag. But there's also some documents and sources I found that ships, the revenue ships that were in the South that surrendered to the Confederacy, actually were flying U.S. flags, even though they were not under the Navy at the time. So it goes back and forth. I have access to the historian's office here in Portsmouth, and they have a lot of the original documents that are really, really interesting. But like the last presenter said, is you start going down these rabbit holes and you get lost completely when you find something really, really interesting. So let me see if I can pull up some of the pictures. So I put together pictures based on sources I found, and a lot of them are not primary. Some of them are secondary or tertiary. The first one from 1799 is from a 1957 publication that says that this is what it looked like, but again, no sources and nothing at all to base it off of. A lot of these pictures are also computerized diagrams that I found from a website that was never published, and I can't find original sources for those. So really 1812, this picture here is the earliest that I could find. It's from a Peabody Revenue Cutter painting that's up in a museum in Massachusetts. And that's pretty much the earliest of what I can find. The main problem was what the arms of the U.S. Was supposed to look like, and it has changed a little bit over the time, but it really has not matched up alongside what the Revenue Cutter Service was flying. And a lot of that is because the directive came out to these ships and told them, this is the flag that needs to, you know, put the arms of the U.S. in the canton. Well, that's great, because you have some, you know, seamen sitting in Annapolis, another one sitting in Massachusetts that don't really know what it looks like, and they're like, well, it's an eagle with stars, and you know, we'll go to town. So that they have completely changed based on who's making it, at what time. It actually was never formally put together until 1927. So anything before 1927 is completely all over the place.
And I see that 1812 picture has 13 stripes, not 16.
Yeah, it's paintings. I'm really hesitant on, you know, a lot of the artists and what they're painting. Do they really know a lot about flags, or are they just putting stripes on there? The regulation said 16, but I have seen some where it is coming out with 13, 17, less. I mean, maybe it had 16 and the, you know, over time it faded away. Not 100% sure there. I don't want to get too much into the weeds because we're still looking at, you know, looking into things. Flags of maritime nations have been really helpful. I've been able to find a lot of really neat information on that. Let's see. I mean, here's one from 1856 that shows what they call United States excise. So with COVID, thank God for Google, has scanned a lot of these books in there, and I don't own at all any of these. So it's really, really helpful to come in here and actually see some of these, which I think is really neat to get that information. So it pretty much went along. Various styles were changing here and there. It was, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but I look at my notes here. Regulations came out in 1874 that the flag was also to be flown on customs houses as well, in addition to the revenue ships out there. And of course, there's that famous quote from the Scarlet Letter from Nathaniel Hawthorne, which says that you know, there's a civil, not a military post in the U.S. government, and that, of course, has led to some wild conspiracy theories. But looking into that I thought was really interesting was that Hawthorne was actually part of the Customs Service, worked for a long time up in Boston. So it kind of debunks a lot of these conspiracy theories saying that, you know, this is a admiralty law and whatnot, when the person writing was very, very, you know, into the customs. He knew what he was talking about at that time. But again, that you go down that rabbit hole to the point. 1910 is when things really started to change. I don't know exactly why the Revenue Cutter Service wanted to be distinguished from the Customs Service and wanted to have their own flag. But what happened was President Taft went ahead and said that the flag flown by the Revenue Cutter Service is to be distinguished by a distinctive emblem of that service, which is great because they didn't say what that emblem was going to look like. So for years, we have always assumed, and this is probably not the best thing to do, of what that emblem looks like. In 1910, we knew that the Coast Guard emblem, or the Revenue Cutter Service emblem, looked like this one here. And because they said the emblem was to be on the flag, everyone assumed, well, that was the exact emblem that's on the flag, which is great, except there has never been a picture or an actual flag that has ever been found that has that emblem on there. And a lot of times what people say is, well, we don't know what the emblem looked like because the Coast Guard never got a seal until 1927, which is correct if you look at the terminology. The Coast Guard didn't get a seal until 1927, but has had an emblem that goes way back, at least to the Revenue Cutter Service, because you're looking at documents and primary sources and it shows up. So it was used on paper, it was used on dispatches and everything like that. So there's this gap of people not knowing what it looked like between 1910 when the emblem was put on there and 1927 when we officially had a seal. 1915 is when the Coast Guard kind of established. That was when they merged it, and the emblem didn't change too much. They just pretty much changed the words along with it. But again, there's not been a single flag out there found that has this symbol on it until 1927, when they distinguished the difference between a seal and an emblem. And in 1927, the seal and the emblem were exactly the same. It wasn't until 1966 in which the emblem looked like that and the seal kind of changed. So going back to our pictures here, what I started finding is that when you do a lot more research, you start to find out that there are hidden things out there. And let's see up to 1910. So I started finding this symbol, and it was a simplified version of the Revenue Cutter Service emblem. But instead of saying Revenue Cutter Service, it just said Semper Paratus, which is our motto in Latin, meaning always ready, and then the year established in 1790. And I thought at first this must have been a fluke, like what does this nothing to do with anything? I'd never seen it before. And still, until I started digging more and more and finding primary flags in which they started having that symbol on there. This is a flag from 1911 that somebody had that was actually flown during a change of command ceremony. So we pretty much can say that it was from 1911, prior to the Coast Guard being established. This is a flag from Mariner's Handbook that didn't have a seal, but it's probably less than a year from when that regulations came out. So maybe it was a mistake. Navy Flags, the Maritime Nations has this, and if you look closer in that symbol, it does say the Semper Paratus one. 1915, the Coast Guard was established, and they continued to use that symbol. In 1916, I found this book, and it was neat because I looked through these, the Google Docs that they have scanned, and you find the page that has the Revenue Cutter Service flag, you look at it, and you zoom in, and I was like, holy cow, there it is. And I found descriptions where it actually says in there, I think I can go back. I apologize, I'm a little bit all over the place here because we're still kind of getting to where we need to go. But here's 1917. This book says the badge and the 7th red stripe veils a shield surrounded by the motto Semper Paratus 1790. So we were finding that what we thought was a fluke was actually pretty standard there. 1923 International Code of Signals had the same symbol on it. In 1924, here's a picture taken at Station Rockaway Point, and you zoom in, same exact symbol. So a really interesting story came up during my research, and I don't know if it's true or not. I like it, but doesn't mean it's true. And it was during the rum wars when the Coast Guard was fighting the rum runners, and they had seized a rum running boat, and it went to court, and the lawyer had said, trying to argue like lawyers normally try to do, that the seizure was unconstitutional and it was illegal because the Coast Guard cutter was not flying the proper ensign. And we were like, well, what are you talking about? And he brought in a couple different ensigns, and they were all different, and they had different eagles on it. Some had 3 arrows, some had 13 arrows, and I think, though he lost the court case, I think that was the time the Coast Guard was like, I think we need to have some kind of standardization here. And sure enough, it was Lieutenant Frank Meals, part of the communications section at headquarters, directed an individual named Oscar Key. He's a civilian engineer and pretty much came up with the design. I contacted the Institute of Heraldry and asked them if they had any documents whatsoever on the ensign, and they came back they scanned these into me, and I got everything they had, and the last document they gave to me was the blueprint, actual blueprint, from 1927 on the Coast Guard ensign. And sure enough, when you zoom in, modified drawing is by a circle K. I'm hoping that that's key, but really, really interesting. And sure enough, the pictures and the diagrams is what the 1927 flag looks like. So this continued on up until the 1950s, and 1951, Truman went ahead and authorized the flag identification project, and the Army found out that the coat of arms the Coast Guard and the Customs were using was not accurately based on what the actual coat of arms was like. So executive order came out, and that was changed. And it was changed to this here, which the coat of arms was now actually designed on base what the actual coat of arms the U.S. was using. So this is the 1951 change. The seal will undergo a little bit of a change there. And this is the 1957. They made a slight change on the symbol that the Coast Guard was using and made sure that the blue matched. The last and final change did not happen until 1966. And what had happened was during the, it all kind of stemmed upon when President Kennedy changed the flag, changed the Air Force One design. And then that kind of went into the pretty much changing a lot of other things with the government. One of the first things they tackled was Coast Guard, and that's how we have our distinctive racing stripe, the red, white, and blue stripe on there. That was part of a huge visualization project, and part of that project was changing the Coast Guard emblem, separating it from the seal. And then this is where we are now at the 1966 flag. And that's essentially remained unchanged, where the emblem that's used is a lot different than the seal that is used on official documents and awards and stuff like that. When the ensign was regulated to more of a regular flag, and they used to, and they, you know, now we got the actual U.S. ensign on the stern, they still to this day fly what we call the Coast Guard ensign, even though it's not an ensign, but it uses that same kind of terminology. In 1799, when the regulations came out saying that this was to be established, 2 other aspects of it came out. One of them was that that this must be flown when engaged in law enforcement activities. So essentially it's the Coast Guard's badge of authority. And it actually gave us the ability that if we fly this flag and we tell you to stop and you do not stop and we do fire our cannons upon you, that we are not legally responsible for any kind of damage happens to your boat. That regulation is still kept up in the US Code. The other aspect of it was that this flag cannot be flown by private individuals. And I believe at the time it was like a $50 fine. Now it's a little bit higher since the 1790s. The flag is still flown. It's still required to be flown. Any kind of law enforcement activities is conducted either by boat or cutter or anything like that. It is flown on land. It's not required to, but a lot of stations will continue to fly it on land there. So that is a really, really brief description, kind of where we're at now. There's a lot more research needs to be done. Once the National Archives open up, I'd like to get back there. I do want to get up to Connecticut and look at the Academy Library to see if there's any more documents. I really want to dive into some of the primary sources, because I don't like the secondary sources that the Coast Guard's been using, because it's just been regurgitating the same information over and over without any primary sources. And of course, over the last 200 years, we have embellished a lot on our history to make it more interesting and exciting. But I really want to figure out what really happened. So if anybody has anything, if they have primary sources, if they have historical maritime books that has images of the ensign or anything whatsoever, please let me know, because I'm trying to compile it all together to get where we're at. And I'm going to see if I can, well, does anybody want to see any pictures or anything before I end the screen sharing?
Keith, I had a question about why the unusual use of vertical stripes?
It was done that on purpose, so it would be completely distinguished from the U.S. ensign at the time. So they purposely made the stripes vertical opposed to horizontal, so that from a distance you would notice, okay, that's not the regular U.S. flag. This is a completely different flag.
Could that have been a result of President Adams' dissatisfaction with yellow? Perhaps they were red and yellow stripes, and he says, well, you know, a couple of years ago, Spain just developed a red and yellow flag. You got to do something different. Get rid of that yellow.
It could be. There is one flag out there, and I'll try to bring it up here, that I'd encourage everyone to go to this website. There is some videos here of them actually looking at this flag. I have not contacted them. I'm on my to-do list with everything else, the kids and stuff, to see if I can get a little bit more information on this flag. They seem to think that it's earlier than 1799. I don't know. There's a lot of back and forth, but in the canton is an eagle that has gold in it. Now, I'd love to believe that this is the first flag, and this was the one presented to Adams, and this is the one he actually looked at, and he looked at it and said, I like everything, but I don't like the yellow. You know, I don't know. It's one of those things there. It's a smaller flag. It probably was never flown on board a ship. So it might have been, they think it might have been hung in a customs house, but that really doesn't make too much sense. But so I don't know. This is one of these flags that when you do research, you think you have it all down. All of a sudden you find this and it's just like, oh, okay, what about this one?
Okay, you know, the curator of that collection is Jim Farragon. Have you been working with him on this flag?
No, I haven't really been working with many people.
Well, it's interesting because Jim Farragon asked me for information on the Coast Guard and the revenue cutter flags, and I provided him with some mid-19th century illustrations. So it sounds like he's on the same track.
Yeah. Because of time, Keith, thank you very much. It's fascinating presentation. Nick, maybe you and Keith and you know, can get together about this afterwards. I can send Nick and Keith, I can send you each other's email addresses if you don't have them, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. And we seem to be running out of time. So I'm going to ask Al and Tom to hold off till next time. And I just wanted to ask in the last few remaining minutes if anyone's got some brief Vexibits or things to show and tell. Ethan, did you have anything that you wanted to show us or tell us about?
No, I was just looking at the some flags on. No, the answer is no.
Okay. Tom Forrest, did you have anything that to show
No,
or to tell?
I have nothing at this time.
Anyone's got some brief stuff, Al?
I've got, well, yeah, can I do a screen share?
Yeah, if it's quick, because it's. I said we'd be ending at 2. I'm willing to stay longer if people want to hang around longer.
Yeah, why not? Anybody who wants to stay can stay.
Yeah, okay. Is it okay with you if we keep going? All right, let's go.
Well, then let me ask Keith a question I want to show you, because
sure, then let's do
it's
that.
my Vexibit. I had a slideshow about flags on postcards, but what I've pulled up is one that I randomly had included today. I'm going to screen share, and I think I know how to do it. Oh, you have to allow me to screen share, right?
I did. You're allowed.
So I hit the green button.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to hit start share on top.
Oh.
There you go.
Can you see that building with the, are you looking at a postcard right now?
Yes, yes.
All right, well, this says federal building, and I figured that was a customs flag up there, right? Is that a customs flag?
Yeah, I would definitely say it definitely looks like a customs flag. Do we know what year this is
Look at
from?
the yellow. I assumed it was just kind of a fluke of the printing that was clumsily done. But I mean, is that John Adams's yellow that he didn't like?
I would say it's probably most likely a picture issue than a yellow or somebody trying to recolor it, because Adams said he didn't like it, so I don't think it was ever included in it. And this picture looks like it's I don't know, I guess 1800s or so.
Yeah, the postcard is 1910.
1910. Yeah. So I would venture to say probably not, but I don't want to ever say no, because then I'll find something else where it was changed. But the customs flag and the revenue flag pretty much stayed along the same parallel to the point where the two of them are identical to each other, exception of the emblem. But
And you said the customs flag and the revenue flag, those are both distinct from the Coast Guard ensign?
the revenue cutter service flag became the Coast Guard ensign in 1915 when the Coast Guard became the Coast Guard, and the Customs continued to use their own flag without the emblem up until today, where Customs and Border Protection still use it.
Okay. All right, that was my question then.
Great.
I mean, I have a whole, if you want more, if we're continuing on, I could show you my Vexibit which was a bunch of
I'm going to come back to you. I just want to see if anyone else has got some show and tell for,
How
just
do I get my screen sharing to give, oh, there we go.
okay. If you could just use the raise hand. Let's see, put up your hands if you got something to show or tell. Chris, Peter, Connor, and that's it. Okay, let's start with Chris.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, these are just a couple quick things. So I purchased an older flag, a fully sewn flag of the races with the sun and the crosses and all that. And when it arrived, the person that I bought it from included a bunch of catalogs, and it was kind of amusing that these catalogs, they're things from like the 1970s and from the American Flag and Banner Company of New Jersey. So it was kind of amusing, and it was definitely amusing to see the price listing. And then the other thing that I have, because we were talking about auctions and all that, just so whenever we get auctions, I have a few things to deaccession. So that's it for me.
Okay.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Now we want to know what he's got.
Well,
fabulous items.
Yeah.
Connor, who hasn't seen his flag collection, we've been to his house and we've seen his how many flags in that closet do you have hanging there?
Oh my,
Well, the total collection is probably about 1,000 flags, 3x5, 4x6.
And these are flags that are used. These are flags that you fly.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Connor, your hand was up.
Yes. All right. Just get one thing set here. All right. This is kind of I got like about four brief like to show you real quickly. Thing that's also kind of is doubling sort of the evolution of my time dabbling in flag design. So as I mentioned earlier, kind of like my very first flag was kind of designed during my sophomore year of college when I was writing some fanfic in my spare time. This was it here. Again, this was made through like a combination of Word and using the chart function on Excel because I didn't really have any real in-depth like design apps or whatnot, or at least not that much knowledge of them. So yeah, the kind of flag the group was known as the Prismatic Alliance, as I called it. The idea was to show that each of those colors represented like a specific leader or kingdom or something, and that it was supposed to represent how when they were united they created peace, which is what the white represents, and it pierces the darkness, hence the black field.
Mm.
Have next one here. As you probably saw earlier, I had a face mask that was sort of a alternate take on the Maryland flag. Being interested in the unique design of it, I went and just threw it together on Illustrator. Yep. Hear me okay? It glitched up a bit.
I can hear you.
Everyone hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, this was basically just a digital recreation of I'll show it here again. This face mask.
Ah, I see.
Also, speaking of the Maryland flag, this hat I'm wearing, I got this at Deep Creek. I feel like such an idiot because I didn't notice this until like 2 days after I bought it. It has the Maryland flag on it, but if you look closely, it's upside down.
It's upside down. I was going to tell you that. I didn't know if you had noticed
upside down. And it's like, it's the more subtle upside down version of it.
Sign of distress.
Well, consider the Maryland flag. There are a couple of ways you can display it upside down, but like this is the more subtle version.
It is. I spend my life walking around different neighborhoods and enjoying the fact that so many people fly the Maryland flag and sending them a postcard telling them they're flying it upside down.
I've seen that too. I've wanted to do that from time to time. This next one here I created in the midst a couple of months ago with the midst of all these different monuments getting torn down and vandalized. I don't want to get too political or anything with this. I got inspired by that one. I can't remember the specific name off the top of my head. It was that one flag, the "Come and Take It" flag.
Mm.
The one that had the cannon on it, and some people will kind of redesign it in the future. Anyways, I kind of did a version of it to represent George Washington. Sort as a response to all that madness going on. And this last one here, this is probably one of my most unique flag creations. Yet next to my Canesville one, as you probably know, a very common trend like you find when you search flags on the internet is alternate designs of national flags. You'll find like meme templates of them. The alternate American flags is definitely like pretty much a whole genre of its own. So I ended up doing one myself, and I believe this one kind of has a more I aim for a bit more of a nationalistic sort of view, but also makes it a lot more unique, a much more unique design compared to other alternate designs out there. So as you can see here, it implements a few extra. It implements. There it goes again. Okay, so as you can see, the basic idea is to represent a nation held together by the immortal ideal set up by the founding fathers, with the immortality established through the Ouroboros here, or the snake eating its tail. As for the pine tree, I went with the New England pine tree. It was tough because at first, like, I have an earlier version here. This was I first went with this sort of a mix between the Star of David and the cross to represent the Judeo-Christian values that our nation was founded upon on it. But then after showing it to a couple of friends of mine, they thought maybe it wasn't as inclusive. And I'm trying to think, okay, well, I mean, yeah, I could choose the eagle, but what's kind of a symbol that's a bit more unique? Is like everybody uses the eagle. Not that it's a bad symbol. It's just that everybody's used it, and being unique is a key factor of a good flag. So I'm browsing my usual like site and stuff. Looking through some American history and such, and I thought, should I look through? And I see and when I'm looking through some Revolutionary War flags, I noticed the pine tree, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, of course, why didn't I see this before? So I took a graphic of the New England flag that had this tree, did a recolor it, slapped in the middle. I personally think it looks a lot better. Probably the hardest part about this was the star orientation, because I thought it would be more powerful keeping the 50 stars, but from how they were designed and spacing and everything, to make it even, but also kind of look like it flows with the curve there of the Ouroboros. It was tricky. Like, I was practically going star by star, just delete R in halves, just figuring, okay, I'll take this one out. And then all the time I'm counting how many there, making sure that it's not over 50 or less. So anyways, yes, that's the gist of my presentations there.
Thank you. It's there's any number of ways to study flags and to understand them and to look at them and to deal with them and have fun with them.
Oh yeah.
And we're glad to see that we've got some new and younger people signing on with us to be with us. So thank you, Connor. We'll see you next time. Betty, did you have anything? You're muted, but that's okay. John Radel, did you have anything?
I'm not muted now.
Oh, now you're not muted. Okay.
I like the idea of looking at flags on masks. Maybe I'll do something next time.
Okay. I think you weren't here at the beginning when I showed my Montgomery County mask.
I just can I say one last quick thing?
Sure,
I forgot. In my research, I actually I was reading a little entry about the Betsy Ross flag, and in there I read this quote that somebody said how he compared the circular design of the stars of the Betsy Ross flag to the Ouroboros, which partly gave me the inspiration to use the Ouroboros in the flag there.
Peter or Nick, you have any comment on that?
Well, just that as most of us know, the circle of stars on the Betsy Ross flag was probably not a Revolutionary War design.
Right.
What that's worth.
It was more popular at the Centennial.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Mr. Weisgerber's painting.
John Radel, did you have anything to share with us?
Wait, Peter, can I ask you something real quick?
Oh, wait a minute.
You said the circle is more of a centennial thing?
Yes.
What about the Confederate First National flag? Isn't that also sometimes arranged in a circle?
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. And I don't know what the relationship is there.
I had no idea. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. That's why we come to these things.
Jack, I've got a real brief item. I'm not even sure I can show it.
We got you next, okay?
But I'll try.
Unless John Radel has anything to. No. Okay. He says no.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just sort of, it occurred to me because of Keith's presentation. My grandfather was a career officer in the Coast Guard. He retired as a Commodore, and I inherited his papers and things a while ago. His materials included 2 flags. One was a small ensign, and it's typical of what you showed there for the 20s. I think it's got the old version of the arms with the stars in an arc, and but it also has the Coast Guard emblem on the fly. And the other one is his Commodore's pennant, which is a blue swallowtail with a single star and the Coast Guard emblem on the fly. But anyway, I also inherited his dress sword, and I'm going to try to show you the engraving on the basket of the hilt. I'm not sure I can get it close enough to the screen. As Keith mentioned, the Coast Guard was created in 1915 and was a merge of the Revenue Cutter Service and the Life Saving Service. Well, my grandfather was commissioned before the merger, so he was actually commissioned in the Life Saving Service. And if you look at this, I don't know if you can see it right here. It has the letters USRCS on the hilt, United States Revenue Cutter Service, which is kind of an unusual thing. I just thought everybody liked to see that.
Thank you. Al. Fine, we'll give you some time.
How much time do you want? Because my thing is maybe too long for.
Well, I'm willing to hang out till 2:30, till 1:30. If other people want to hang on, we'll listen to you, and people who want to leave will leave.
Okay.
Okay.
Then let me. So I hit share screen again.
Yep. There you go.
Looking at the Betsy Ross house?
Yep.
Okay. So I collect postcards. I must have 30 boxes of postcards. I must have 30,000 postcards, 40,000 postcards. I buy and sell them also. I set up at shows. Well, I did before the virus anyway. But so postcards document the entire endeavor of human history during their existence. The heyday of postcards is the first couple of decades of the 1900s. And of course, flags appear on them in all kinds of ways for all kinds of purposes. And it's fun to start with one of the Betsy Ross House in Philadelphia, which are very, very plentiful. They're as plentiful as the Statue of Liberty on postcards. But it's fun to see, if you look at different ones through the years, how the front of the house changes and the displays of flags on their changes. Art's still in the room? Art left. Art's a Philadelphian. And I was going to ask him if he knew what this is. Does anybody know what this is? This is Betsy Ross's first grave. I forget the name of the cemetery. Art would know it, but I forget it. It's a grown-in cemetery now that's being overrun by nature. But this is what it looked like when it was still a well-run cemetery. It's outside of Philadelphia. And this is the Betsy Ross house today. And you'll notice in the courtroom to the left of the house where you see this historical marker, you'll also see her grave. Is my screen share working? Okay, are you looking at her, another grave? Okay. So this is the Betsy Ross grave today at the Betsy Ross house. There's the stone saying that she's in it, but nobody really knows who is in that grave. There's still a website of the cemetery where she was first buried, and their own website says that at the time of the bicentennial, when they figured, you know what, we should reinter her at her house in Philadelphia, which is another story if that's really her house, but we should reinter her there. And the website of this cemetery says that Well, they went there and there were no markings showing where her grave was, but they knew where the family was buried, and they started digging until they found a grave and simply moved those remains to there, which is where an untold number of tourists come and see Betsy Ross's perhaps grave. So here's another postcards from 1898, and the flags are on that side of the card. It's a Philadelphia flag, and it's from the 1898 Peace Jubilee. Around the country, there were such jubilees celebrating the end of the Spanish-American War. This is a pretty cool example of social history showing flags on postcards. It's got a Christian cross. Legend reads, "By this sign conquer." And on the back, we see that it's, well, it was postmarked in 1910. And I find the inscription kind of, well, it's pretty strong. It says, "This card is for worldwide use as an emblem of the spirit of world conquest for Christ, as a souvenir of the world's 6th Sunday School Convention in Washington." And it goes on to describe more about the organization. So it was an actual event of a convention of Sunday school, Sunday schools, I guess, showing a Christian conquest for Christ. But it's a beautiful image with all the ethnic costumes. And can somebody tell me what's going on with the flag of Sweden? What's in the canton there? Anybody know?
Yes.
What is it?
That's the union symbol of
Yeah.
Sweden and Norway.
Yeah.
So is that before they were separate countries?
Yes, between 1814 and 1905.
Okay, that's why we come to these things. Somebody knew.
And the Norwegians used the canton kept on both flags.
Yeah.
So this is the Swedish, the Norwegians will use their flag with the canton, with the union.
But this
So
is why there
like
was
union and a Norwegian herring union flag. It's called actually, Whitney Smith called the herring.
The herring salad, yes.
The herring salad. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, the two countries were nominally independent, but they both united under the crown of the Swedish king. He was the king of both Sweden and Norway.
very cool. So here's I just like this one because we're used to seeing the blue star flag, but here's one. It's an example of a corporation or business flying a flag, and the idea was a star for each employee of that business who was off serving. Do I have that right? When you see these multi-star ones, it's supposed to be because that outfit has that many people serving. Is that right?
Yeah, that was a tradition.
Yeah. Here's kind of a way not to display historical flags, but you can still find flags displayed this way in state houses. I think I was recently in, I think New Hampshire State House still has a display like this. These are Civil War flags in Boston, early part of the 20th century. It's just, I like that one just because it's a modern day. This is like from, well, there you go, from the 60s. Just kind of fun to see a flag still on a postcard. I love this monument. Does anybody know what this is? The cenotaph,
right?
The cenotaph.
Yeah, it's
in London.
Yeah,
Right.
I find it such a cool monument. And I just love the design of it. It's a World War I monument for the Great War. And there's just a few images of it with the flags. I like the way they display the flags.
Cenotaph means empty tomb.
Correct.
No one actually buried there.
Exactly. It's just markers.
This is a beautiful image, and I show the back of this card just in case anybody ever gets interested in collecting postcards. Tux, which you see there, is the name of the publisher. They were a very well-known publisher of very beautiful cards, very beautiful illustrations, usually published in sets of 6. Oh, there's the flag, the card we looked at before. This is a popular kind of way to use a flag on cards showing a wounded, or in this case, dying and dead service member with a grieving widow. Anybody know what this is promoting? A specific piece of American political initiative?
The Marshall Plan.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Danish card commemorating the Marshall Plan. Very good, Jack. This is another example of a set. I've got 3 cards from this set. It's a Revolutionary War commemoration, and I love the way they just use all the different flags, picking, like in this case, a specific flag and devoting the whole card to it. There's another one. This was, I think, a set of 20 cards.
Al, would
Yes.
you come back for just 1 second to the Marshall Plan display? Just 1 second. There's a flag, this one, the one below Italy. What's that, Trieste?
Trieste.
Yes. Yeah, which status was still in doubt.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? There were some flags, like even Salzburg, that the status was a little bit, they didn't know if they're going to join Italy, they were going to join Austria or Yugoslavia, etc.
Very cool.
I don't recall seeing it before, so thank you. It's a great document.
Well, thanks for bringing it up. Oh, so here, that's Masaryk, the founder of, we consider him the founder, right? Of
historians call him the inventor of Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia, right?
He invented the whole thing.
Yeah.
He
was living in America, and he was a great promoter. And the problem was, you can see the Bohemian flag, the flag of Bohemia behind him. There weren't enough Slavic people in Bohemia and Moravia alone, because there were so many Germans in the area. And that's why he got the idea that they would combine Slovakia with Bohemia and Moravia so that they would have an overwhelming Slavic majority, even though the Czechs and Slovaks didn't get on so well together.
Right. And you know Roman Klimesh, he mentioned that the flag, which we know today have the Czech Republic, formerly the Czechoslovakian Republic, was flown before at the Plaza Hotel in New York, where Masaryk was staying. But he asked me once to go to the archive, but that hotel has changed owners so many times that the historian said, we don't have any documents which flag was flown with Mr. Masaryk, I guess, and Czechoslovakia was not even founded yet, but the motion was put to the members of the Versailles Treaty.
Yeah. So this is interesting. This predates the Czechoslovak flag.
Pretty much, yes, pretty much. Maybe by months. I mean, but I try to satisfy Roman, but you know Roman.
Yeah. Al, do you have a date on this flag, on this postcard?
Let me look at the back. Wait a minute.
While he's doing that, it's interesting that there's 6 and 7 point stars on the American flag.
Didn't even know. How many stripes?
Yeah, there's like 127 of them, it looks like.
All I can tell you from the back of the card, it's not postally used, so there's no postmark, but there's a way to tell that it's after. The only thing we can tell is it's after 1907. That's all we can say. So no, I don't know much about the date. This is another example of a Revolutionary War set. This is about a set of, again, about 20 different cards. Another popular way to use a flag with women, glamorous women. There's even sets. In fact, I might have some coming up. They were called bells, state bells, as in, you know, a woman as a bell. And flag on a train from the bicentennial. Oh, here we go. Another, again, using that same kind of full shot of a woman ethnically dressed with symbols of her country and the flag of the respective countries. So there's lots of different kinds of sets like these. Oh, this might be hard to see. This is three-dimensional. This is actually embroidery on the flag. There's kind of oftentimes in silk. This one I don't think was silk. And it's it's a German for those, it's kind of a way of saying long live Germany, hoch lebe, so high life Germany. I think the implication is long live Germany, right?
Germany prosper.
Yeah.
Just did I'm sorry to interrupt. I just did an interesting article on Grandma Moses and her art. And she started out actually embroidering cards with mosquito netting, similar to this. That's how she started out.
Oh, and this is, there's a whole genre of flags in water skiing. They're actually a pretty good prop for water skiing because they, they capture the speed of the event and they wave. So here's just a generic use of flags on water skiing. There's the patriotic subgenre of flags on water skiing.
The previous slide looks like there was a festivity of the flag of Nepal.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no water in Nepal.
And there's the promotional flags on water skiing. In this case, a specific venue. Oh, and I threw in, since I brought it up before, my first day in the flag business, the return of the Iranian hostages in New Windsor, New York. This is a postcard I published, actually, 1 year after the event. And I think that's it. So full circle. So thank you for your time.
Well, that
Thank you very much. I'm glad we got you in. I think next time I didn't realize how many really good presentations we were going to have. I think next time I will make the meeting perhaps a little bit longer than just the 3 hours. If people can tolerate sitting in front of their computer screen for that long.
Have we been here that long? Who knew? I want to ask Ethan something. Ethan, I see you sort of circling around. Are you on a table that moves? How does that work?
I'm on a leather chair thing from, I think, IKEA or Crate and Barrel, something like that.
Oh, so your laptop is on a desk and you just sort of move around.
It's a laptop. So it's on my lap.
Oh, I see. Okay, I was wondering how he was doing that. Nice.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Ethan and Keith to see you guys again, and John, and welcome to Tom. Thank you very much. I hope you'll come back and join us again in the future. But we always love to welcome our first timers.
Here, here.
Here, here, indeed.
So what
where cats
what
are
what else is there to say? Who's got
Jack, just a real quick note.
Yes.
Vexillum 11 is in final preparation, so you should be seeing it in a couple of weeks. And with it will be coming this year's issue of Raven. We're sending it out early this year because everything was ready, so we're sending it. So you'll see both of those pretty soon.
I just wanted to say hi to Chris Madish, who is on the tall ship, the Calvalari, someplace in the Atlantic.
Oh.
Oh my. Look at that.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. We just arrived at the port of Mystic, so we got communications here. Yeah, I'll just give you a quick tour of the ship.
I've been on that ship, Chris.
Oh, that'd be great.
Up. Yeah, Calvalari, good to see. You could maybe get a better look there. Going up to the top deck here.
Mystic. Boy, Vexillologists get around, don't they?
Yeah. That's behind me is the Amistad that was in the movie a few years ago. We're in dry dock. It has to get repairs. One fun flag fact about the Calvalari is that she's authorized to fly the Swedish war ensign when the king visited, when they launched the ship back in, I think it was 1997 or 98. I know that by heart by now. Don't tell the captain I don't know. But here it is, maybe a life preserver. Calvalari, can you see that? Oh, we're sort of quarantined off of the ship. It's hard to see people, so I have to go to an area where there's no one can look at me. But yeah, it's a volunteer ship. Been on it for a week. We sailed through Manhattan. And woo. Oh, sorry.
The name of the boat is the Mystic, Christopher?
the Calmar Nickel. The Calmar Nickel.
He's in Mystic currently.
Yeah, she was the first ship to bring the old world Europeans to the Delaware Valley, landing in Delaware. And from there, they colonized a little bit of Pennsylvania first. I guess you could say the first white men and women to be in Pennsylvania and Delaware, technically, before the British or the French.
Or the Dutch.
Or the Dutch. The Dutch tried, but their colonies fell apart. So Sweden kind of took the honors for that. But we're in Mystic, Connecticut right now. Beautiful ship harbor. Oh my goodness. It's pictures don't do it justice, like all the beautiful ships and people. Seems like everyone owns a boat around here. Even more the berth here. And yeah, our ship flies 3 flags in the back. The ensign is the US flag. Then the next pole, which would be the mizzenmast, has the Dutch flag, because she was originally a Dutch ship. Then the middle flag flies the Swedish war ensign. And then the next one flies the flag of Finland. And finally, the state flag of Delaware at the jack. Let me see if we can get that flag in there real quick. I think they still have it up. If I don't slip and fall.
That would be bad.
Gotta climb up here. All right, here we go. That is the flag of Delaware somewhere up there.
This is too fun.
Yeah. Delaware state flag brought over the first old world peoples to the new world, and that's the Amistad that actually starred in the movie back in the 90s. I think Spielberg directed it. Let's sprint up there. Can you see that? I don't think I can zoom in. That's Delaware state flag, kind of flop there. All right. Okay. Any questions about the Calmar Nickel?
How do you spell that? I just want to put it in the record here. I don't know how to spell it.
MAR, like the Calmar Union, because it was one of the communities that raised the funds to get the ship into the Swedish service. So Calmar, in another city in Sweden, had a fundraiser because they just lost their big warship, the Vasa. It was this beautiful, beautiful ship, poorly designed. Right after it left harbor. Some of you are a naval historian, you might know a little bit about that. And so instead, they went for the Dutch-built pinnaces and christened it the Calmar Union. And they started their colonization of the Americas. First settlers of Delaware and my home state of Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Thank you very much, Chris. We're going to have to shut down the meeting at this point. We had some wonderful presentations. Thank you all for coming, and we will plan to do this again in a couple of months again. This is August. Perhaps we'll plan for early November before we get into Thanksgiving time.
Thanks for organizing.
Thank you, Jack.
Jack, you were great. Thanks so much.
And John, I will send you Steve Milton's contact info, and Keith, Keith, do you have Nick and Peter's contact info to talk about flags with?
I don't believe so. No. If you could shoot me
I'll send that around. I mean, I tend to send the emails, with BCCs, but I think it should be okay if I share y'all's information with each other.
Also, so I just want to say we're always looking for volunteers. The CBFA, it's free. Join, take the class. You can go on voyages, day sails, sailings. It's virtually chartered by the Delaware state, but it's really a private institution right in Wilmington. So if you want to get your sea legs out, again, I'm broken like I did, give me a call, send me a link.
Okay. Oh, nice. Such fun. Peter, can I visit with you for a second? Peter?
Yeah, sure.
You were doing a Vexibit there shortly, and I had to step out for a second. What was it about?
I was just showing my my grandfather's sword. He was an officer in the Coast Guard, and he was commissioned before it was the Coast Guard. Okay. So his sword has USRCS on it for Revenue Cutter Service.
Oh, great! Thank you.
Great.
Bye, everybody. Good to see you.
Goodbye,
Nice to see you,
Al.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Al, does your postcard collection only contain postcards with flags, or do you have others?
Oh, there's myriads of every imaginable topic.
Oh, well, then maybe you may want some of my old postcards. You do collect old New York City restaurants?
I'd love to see them, yeah.
All right, next time you're down here.
Oh, yes, great.
In better times.
Yes.
Okay, everyone, good to see you all.
Great. Thank you, Jack. You did a great thing bringing us all together. We appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Wear those masks. Stay
Yes,
safe.
ma'am.
Oh my! I want a mask with a flag on it. That's what I can't find. How do you find them?
Tom, get in touch with me. Maybe I can make you one.
Or
thank you, Betty.
The Maryland one comes from a company called Lightning Fabrics or Lightning Corporation or something like that. You can find them on the web. That's where we got these from. It's a Maryland company. I don't know if they do Virginia.
Yeah, if I could find little 6x9-inch flags, I could easily turn them into masks.
Oh, how fun is that?
And the CDC is now suggesting that the front layer be synthetic anyway, so polyester nylon is fine.
Yeah.
I make the back and center layers of, the appropriate back and center stuff.
You mean the 4x6-inch flags?
No, I need them bigger. The standard pleated mask is like a 6x9 fabric.
Okay.
And, the more seams you introduce, the more vulnerability you introduce. So we want to keep from having to sew it on to something else.
Yeah.
Although that's less of a risk than just a downright seam.
I see. Okay.
Anyway, I'm experimenting with other designs so we can meet the 3 and 4 layer thing. But yeah, I don't have one on me. My standard one is a 6x9 that's pleated on the sides, wire on the top, little box pleat on the bottom.
Huh. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty soon we'll have the presentation on when this is over of all of the flags that were used as masks.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
okay,
I've seen a few people wearing American flags on their faces, and I want to tell them about the flag code, but
you can't, telling people anything. People's minds are made up. Whether
it's a little trouble this day,
yeah. I would like to have the suffragist flag across my face when I go to vote.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting now. Thank you all. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Jack. Good to see you guys.
Peter, I'll talk to you and Ted at some point about affiliates.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. See you later, everybody.
Bye, guys. Have fun,
Bye.
Chris. Bye.
Turn off the recording.